joining, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to just come here and join me and listen to this. And hopefully, I'm not too nervous because this is a fairly big crowd. So I really appreciate everyone coming in. All right, so first and foremost, I thought it was important to start with a few slides before actually showing the game. And so, all right, so share, hopefully, oh, not share. I keep doing that, and I feel like that's an often thing. When you think share, you think open it up, but nonetheless. All right, so I'm here to present my thesis, which is titled Sweet Honey. And it's specifically a simulation on how diabetes and health is impacted by socioeconomic disparities. So here's my thesis statement, even though it's not fully, I guess, part of my creative topic, I think it's important to mention it because it really brings a lot of back knowledge to know where this is coming from. And so socioeconomic disparities have been linked to increasing the risk of diabetes. This simulation will show how socioeconomic disparities affect health because of the many difficult decisions and anxiety caused by situational struggles. And just a little bit of health disparities and disparities in general is often referred by just one group having either more difficulties or, and specifically health disparities are people who end up having more injuries, injuries, illnesses, disabilities, or even morality due to just being in a part of a group. And I'm looking into more how these health disparities, so risk of falling into illnesses, are affected by socioeconomic status. And the reason why having a lower socioeconomic status is due to many effects. There's a lot, and I don't really think I could really ever truly explain it all, but the few things that I felt that were important to talk about was healthcare, environmental exposure, health behavior, and chronic stress. So healthcare, one thing, and this is highlighted within my simulation, is often people find it difficult to pay for healthcare, or, which is a very common struggle, is people are capable of paying for healthcare. However, they're not capable. They can receive healthcare, but they can't pay for it. And some people just are not eligible to get healthcare, and that leads to many different issues. Environmental exposure. So part of it is many communities that fall into a disparity, or they have socioeconomic troubles, often are found in communities that are more at risk to environmental toxins, and just different environmental exposures. Health behavior is often also linked to many different lifestyle choices and difficulties that come because you can't pay for some of the healthier food options, or you fall into chronic stress, which can lead to poor choices, which can affect health. And one more thing before showing the game is a food desert. And this is highlighted within my own simulation. And what a food desert is an area or an area of people, so do not have access to healthier food options, just because they're either restricted or there's no grocery stores nearby. And fun fact, or sad fact, actually, I would say, Buffalo's East Side is a food desert. And in a way, I want to present my simulation. I tried my best to be as kind of non-defiant, so there isn't a real specific place because this is happening all over America. My character, he or she isn't specific, and that's just because I want to just show the difficulties of socioeconomic status. And so instead of kind of explaining this, I think it's important to show it. And so, okay, I have to one thing, share computer sound so that you can hear the music within this. And I want to kind of show kind of how status is affected. And I just want to ask, can you guys hear me, or is the music a little too loud? Is it good? Okay, I can't really see you guys. Okay. All right, perfect. So I want to try to talk over it. I think, 1 second. I know that sometimes it can be a little too loud. So just because I really want to show off the music that was created. So, and if I consistently pause it, you guys can't fully hear everything. So we're gonna bring it down a notch, and then here we go. All right, so hopefully that works a bit. So here's the beginning of it. And when we first start off, there's a tutorial, and it's fairly normal kind of movement. So ASWD is to move, and to interact is the left mouse key. And as we can kind of see that the character itself is gray. Like I mentioned before, I don't want to give specific personality traits to this character because I want it to be universal. Health disparities have so many different effects and so many things that feed into it. And part of it is age, disability, ethnicity, race, gender. There's so much that goes into it, and I could have never shown it all within this one level. But so I felt that it would be best to kind of present it as a gray character in a more kind of grayish, bluish kind of world. And so on the left side, we can see the account money, and your objective is to go to work. And so my first assumption is to go to the door. And so now you have the weekly balance of around $245. Where did that come from? Well, that is the average weekly pay someone receives that is 100% below the poverty line. And this is in America. Like I said, it's not specific to any country or any place, but this is within America. And the objectives within this game is to get food from either the convenience store or the grocery store and to pay your bills. And so we can continue, and we can see now that the account is a little bit higher, and your objective is to go to the store. Like I said, my first assumption is to walk out the door. And so once we're there, we kind of come into the neighborhood. And so we can either move left, but the way that I kind of angled things, many people, it's part of game design. You would move to the left just because of where your character's standing. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about this part. And so the music is fairly quiet right now and kind of ominous. And this is to feed into the anxiety. I can never really explain some of the anxiety and the stress people feel during these walks in food deserts to far distances, right? I don't think I can ever really show that, but I tried my best to show it within music and with emotions and try to explain that. And so here's our first stop, the convenience store. However, I don't have a lot of time, so I think it's best just to go the whole way so you guys can experience not only the music, but the rest of the scene. So the music just increased, hoping to kind of give that ominous fear, kind of, oh goodness, this is scary, right? It's still dark with only the specific convenience stores and your house kind of shining light. And as we walk through, it gets even darker. Like I said, this is my kind of creative way of trying to show the user that this is a fearful moment. Also, the art style, each of the houses are very similar. The road is very similar, and I was hoping to kind of give that feeling because you don't often. It's very difficult to show it. So through this through the repetition of similarities that often comes into light, and so the music gets even louder through the game. And you can't really go into any of the houses. So if anybody ever wants to really go in, you can't really move around. And so I wanted to show, so the reason why I really wanted to hone in on this stress level is actually from a patient that I met at Good Neighbors when I was volunteering there. And she experienced some difficulties, and she had some swelling in her legs, and the physician said that she should walk more. and she knew she needed to walk more, but she was so afraid of walking in her neighborhood because she just felt so unsafe. And that broke my heart. She knew what was best for herself, but she just was afraid. And I really, really wanted to showcase this is a walk to the store and you already feel anxious. And so now we're at the grocery store, and so we go into the level, and so here we are, and the objective is to buy food for the week. And so there's a few categories. Like I said, this isn't a perfect world. I wasn't able to add every single food, but we have a few things. We have, this is kind of the carb category. And we can choose whatever you want for the week. And keep in mind, you only have the amount of money that you have, but you also need to keep in mind the second to-do list is to pay your bills. And so you always have to make sure you have enough money by the end. So rice is fairly cheap, so let's pay for some rice, and then we can just go back. There's also this category of snacks, right? And let's say I'm feeling like a bag of chips, right, for the week. So vegetables, that's very important. That's why we came to the grocery store, so we had the ability to get fresh fruits and vegetables. So 2 heads of lettuce, some broccoli. We don't have to go for the canned food this time. That's why we came to the grocery store. There's also a variety of fruits that I thought would be good. And all the prices here are pretty much what we found off of Walmart. What I found off of Walmart, and as I researched it, and just I wanted to get the best kind of price. It's like I said, it's not perfect. I'm not adding taxes, which that's a whole other burden, like I said. So there's also the protein section, and let's say we want some beans for the week, right? So 6 of them, right? Just canned beans, that's what we like. And then there's also just the ice cream. So really that's about it. And you can always go back if you want something different, if you want to add more to your cart, I guess, and you can add some more. Just keep in mind your account, and with everything that you buy, things could decrease a little bit. So there we go. And then once you feel that you're satisfied with the food that you bought, you can leave. And the exit sign's on the bottom, so hopefully that's the way to go. And so we're actually on the exact same walk back. And it's long, right? It's kind of tedious, it's a little boring, and it's a little scary. And like I said, this making sure you have that walk back, I felt can bring it a little more to life, right? I could have just teleported us back home, but it's not what it is in real life. And so on this walk back, I want to explain a little bit about my inspirations as well again. And I was inspired to go for this 2D bit kind of style, first of all, because I'm not really an artist, and I felt most comfortable drawing like this. But the art style was also inspired by one of my favorite games, Undertale. And it's the reason why I even went to game design in the first place. And the concept of this game was also inspired by a different simulation of poverty. It's called Spent. However, it works very differently from my simulation in the sense that that simulation is all about reading and making decisions. And you make the decision, do I take the walk, the 20-minute walk? Do I choose to let my child go to a birthday party, right? And it was really interesting, and it really conveyed what it tried to do. Like, what it really wanted to show was the decisions people have to make when they fall into poverty. But I wanted to make something that was a little more personal, right? The user gets to play the character. You're moving around, you're taking the walk, you're listening to the music. And even though I can't add, at least into this kind of thesis right now, I couldn't add too many different decisions that you could make. I felt that I just really wanted to show it and physically show the decisions that people that experience poverty have to make. And so it's just a combination of kind of two, the roaming around the world and making the decisions. And so once we're back home, if you try to go a little bit further, you can't. So this is the place that we have to go. And then once you're home, we can actually see that the account changed. And the reason why the account changed is because we're assuming that this is the end of the month. Like I said, this isn't perfect to life, but I wanted to bring a point. We took the account balance that you had because you get a weekly paycheck and multiplied it by 4. And we're assuming you're getting the same amount of food around every week. And so when I say we, it's really just me. And I had a lot of help in the coding and of course the music, which I will explain at the very end a little bit more. But once we come in, we have to pay the bills, and now we see that there's some bills on the table. And so now we have to choose the rent and the bills that we want to pay. And the prices for these, like I said, are a little more universal. And with the money that we have, of course, we want to make sure we're still living in our house. Now we're down to $200. All right, we want to make sure we have light, right? And now we barely have enough money to even pay for insurance. Or if you wanted phone or internet or cable, right? You have to make the decision on what you feel is best for yourself. I personally am going to go for the health insurance, but now you have really nothing. You don't have a lot of money to save up for a car. You don't have the money to pay for phone and internet and cable. And so that's the whole point, right? It's difficult. If you paid for food that was healthier, right? There were so many more options that you could have paid for. You could have went for more food, but you might have not even been able to pay your utilities if you did that. If you made different decisions and you just didn't buy any food, right? You would have the money to pay for bills, but the issue is you don't have, the money, you won't have food, and that's kind of the influence behind this game. And so at the end, I just wanted to kind of talk to the user, kind of game maker to user, and just kind of explain the situation. And these are a few questions to bring to light just the feelings that the user might have felt. So did they feel anxious? Did they feel stressed? Did they feel like this was difficult to kind of balance everything? And once they kind of acknowledge that, they can continue, and then I can talk to them just about the risk factors. It's important to explain that socioeconomic inequalities do act as risk factors for diabetes, but also for other health disparities. I just looked into diabetes to have a more specific topic, but this really opens up to the whole health world. And these inequalities have led to poor nutrition, right? You choose more canned foods instead of the more organic or natural foods, and you tend to it leads to being overweight, and it leads to obesity and maybe alcohol consumption from stress. Like there's so much that can be affected by it, and anxiety leads to biological effects. There's so many things that kind of contribute into this. And of course, I don't want to make this too sad, right? There are these difficulties, but what can we do about this? It's really it's important to acknowledge that this is a problem, right? We can't just let it go under the radar. The first place that we can start by making a change is, by acknowledging it. And then it's a matter of changing the system. Why do we even have a place where people can be 100% under the poverty line? Why are we even allowing this to be part of our country, right? So we have to acknowledge it and allow more people to be more aware of the situation. And again, I talk a little bit more about the complications that come with socioeconomic status. There are less groceries, you're in food deserts, there are less access to public transportation, there's less of an integrated healthcare system. And it all really starts by having the local and state and federal government recognize these are disadvantages, because if it's a disadvantage, we must help them. It's not just on them to get out of it. And so through all the research articles that I read and a lot of stuff that I looked into, a lot of it is we need to change a lot of policies. We need to add better educational systems. We have to allow for the access of healthcare. we must reduce the socioeconomic disparities and therefore reduce, well, in this game, the risk of diabetes, but generally speaking, just a lot of health disparities. And so at the end, this is just to kind of teach people if they want to, not teach, but if they want to look more into it, here's just a few organizations that talk about it in more detail and kind of pretty much say what I say, but in a more paragraph robust way. And finally, this was my simulation by me. The music is actually created by someone that's on our who's here right now too, Max Dudek. He does not go to Canisius, but he made every song that was in this, and I'm really grateful for him. I'm also incredibly grateful to Tyler and Dr. Backstrom. They have been so incredibly helpful. Tyler, this is my year and a half into gaming and my gaming education, so I'm not well versed in coding, so he's been super helpful throughout the whole semester with my coding. And Dr. Backstrom just has been so amazing in not only inspiring this kind of concept, because I do many conversations with her, and consistently her giving me more familiarity about the difficulties that many of these communities have experienced. So I just want to say thank you, and again, thank you all for coming to this. And so if anybody has any questions, I will gladly listen.
I have one.
Go for it.
So this seemed to be a single person, right?
Yes.
As opposed to a parent with dependents,
Yes.
which I imagine would make things even more difficult.
Yes.
But did you learn anything about that particular situation?
No, I didn't look too much into it, but like I said, a lot of it would make things even more difficult. It would mean that you have to pay for even more foods, and you more likely the person that would be, so I'm planning on continuing this project, and that is one of the things that I want to look into. I want to make more levels, and I'm hoping that at some point I can even put some kind of in the very beginning. You can choose, are you single or are you with dependents? Are you by yourself, or is it maybe a family? There's two of you. At some point, I'm even planning on probably adding the whole point of healthcare. What type of healthcare do you plan on paying for? Because there are many different levels of it. There's what kind of job you have, or what are you willing to go into? There's even if you have an illness, right? That's a whole other difficulty. And I do plan on actually going further into the simulation as I continue throughout my education, and adding more of this, and adding the dependencies, and adding the maybe you have diabetes, what then? There's so much to it, and I sadly cannot put it all into this one level. But yes, it is definitely something I look forward to looking into.
So how does it compare going into the convenience store? Did they end up with less money then in terms of for the bills, or?
Really, it would be, they would have less variety of food. And so they're more likely, so the plan is the list of foods that I said to put into there would be more canned goods, right? Because that's what you think when you go to when you go into, let's say, a gas station. Maybe more snack foods like cookies and stuff. There's maybe the only protein that you could really get is like beef jerky. There's not a lot. Like you can only get one apple instead of maybe a whole bunch of them. And in a way, you might end up spending more because of how convenience stores work a lot of the times. Like you'll pay $2 for an apple when in the grocery store you can get a whole bag for $2 to $3. And so in a way, you're right. Yeah, actually, there probably would be less money. But again, it's all about the decisions and all of that. Yeah, that's it.
So is there a way that you could show the consequences of that? So like if you go to the convenience store and have more cookies at the end of it being different than if when you went to the grocery store and got like vegetables and chicken?
Actually, that's definitely part of the future direction. And in the very beginning, that was something that I really wanted to do. But like I said, I am a one-woman show and I only have a year and a half of experience in coding. And even then, I've only really had like a year tops. It's just, this is something I've never seen before. I've never done. I've done mobile gaming and I've done 3D gaming, so it's a little different than this, and I really did want to do that. I did want to have the consequences. It was a little too much of a load for someone who's never looked into this before, but I thought in the future I hope to add that if you buy a few more cookies and chips and ice cream, you end up having, in a way, maybe more points. There could be in an immigration of a point system. And if that point system comes in, you can have a different ending. But like I said, I really only had a month and a half to work on the game because I also had a thesis document. I had I made around a 33-page document about everything that I plan on putting into the game, and the combination of the two is a lot. But in the future, I do hope to add that because I feel like it'll really make it even more of a statement.
So for those of us who know zero coding, can you kind of help me understand the kind of the proportion of time in a project that would be devoted to different aspects? So for instance, if you wanted to add in another counting function so that you could maybe compare calories in the convenience store versus the grocery store, have that as another target where you have to achieve a certain number of calories, but with minimal amount of money, which would probably better illustrate what the temptation to buy unhealthy foods, right? Cheap but filling, or how much coding goes into if you wanted to change up the way the neighborhood looks to maybe illustrate some empty lots, walk to the grocery store, or add in a distance to the grocery store or something like that. So
every single house that you saw there, every single object that you saw, it was handmade and hand pixelated by me. So every single one of those takes time. So I have to make the art for it. And then once the coding comes in, let's say the save function. So the fact that the money stayed the same in the corner when you transitioned from room to room, because each of those are different scenes and different levels. Just that part took over 10 hours of perfecting and implementing and adding into it. And that's just the save function. And that was with Tyler's help. So adding this point system would mean that each food I would have to have a different kind of coding section, and I would have the name and the product that I would have there, and I would most likely have to put the count into there, and each food item would have a specific count. Then that specific count would have to be thrown into the save function, so that it can continue from scene to scene. And I would imagine that something like that would take another 10 to 20 hours, especially since it's a lot of this code is finding older code from like online and remaking it and adding your own code so that it can be implemented and works well with the code that you already have, because it has to make sure that you don't say something in this code that falls apart with the other code, because if it does that, then everything crashes. So it would take another good amount of hours. But like I said, I am looking into actually doing something like that. And I actually want to thank you for the calorie idea, because I think that's a phenomenal idea. And I would love to implement that into the future models and prototypes of this game. But it would definitely take a lot of time. Yes.
So I think this is really, really great, and I'm glad you're able to show, the concept in be able to indicate where things plug in rather than having to feel like you had to get every single thing. In a sense, I see this, you could almost go sort of an Oregon Trail parallel, to show you made these choices and your health status or anxiety level improves. You made these other choices and it didn't. So I guess is part of the idea for people to be able to play multiple times and track and reflect on, I make these choices and this is what happens. Also, even to give, I guess, a sense of agency to be able to say, I do have control over some of these things, even though I don't have a control over being in a food desert. So, and I'll say this from the pointy-haired boss kind of level of not understanding the coding. Is it possible to have each user be able to track and go back and look at some kind of record of, I made these choices and these were the outcomes, so that then you can have the chance to compare rather than sort of having to think, well, I think this is what happened when I did these different things.
So that definitely can be implemented. That is a common game aspect to already a lot of games out there. So whenever you think of, I know when you track your progress, it would be something out there, and that's the whole point of a save file. So we technically there is already a code into there that has been implemented for something like that. It's just like I said, this is one level, but definitely I would even personally would make it so that at the end you do know how much you affected stuff. You do know how which food you chose would affect something. And at the end of the day, it's also difficult because I don't want to say, okay, you have an ice cream, oh, now you're going to get diabetes. That's also false. And that's the difficulty of a lot of this. I need to understand the creative liberties that I can take while still showing the difficulties, but not also making false claims. But like I said, that's definitely a place that I want to go to. I plan on working on this next semester. And honestly, throughout the rest of my career and wherever I go, I'm really excited for this project. And I know there's not a lot of things out there like this. And I definitely do want to implement a lot more of the higher concept of coding. And like I said, that's a high coding concept. And juggling between writing and coding, I had to make, sadly, some cuts to what I wanted. Because I'm going to be honest with everyone, I wanted to add a whole point system. I really wanted to add that, but just didn't have the time. Yes, Dr. O'Brien.
One thought, it's a really cool game. One thought, if you're looking forward, you might consider doing something like a trade-off, right? So you have maybe a hunger bar, which says, okay, well, I should need to go out and get food, gives you the impetus to do that. But then the trade-off of maybe a health bar, which is, okay, well, I can very rapidly take care of that health bar and I get, happy, like ding, with the hunger bar by going to the convenience store. But the health bar will start to suffer, right? I can pay for rent and electricity, but if I don't get the health insurance, then the health bar will suffer. But then if you focus on the health bar, then you're trying to balance 1, 2, 3 different things. That increases the challenge and engagement in the game, but then would also, take a whole heck of a lot more coding. So it's
that I'm going to reiterate myself one more time, and you guys probably all think I'm lying, but I also wanted to add a health bar and I wanted to add all of that. But coding specifically like that is way above my level. That kind of coding, I needed to be coding for 7 years if I wanted to do it in the span of a month. That's what my guess is. And I can't do any other schoolwork, and I can't be applying to medical school. That's honestly, I believe, a very difficult kind of task and goal. But like I said, I really that's definitely where I want to go. And it really would give it that more, like I said, I want the combination of the RPG, the moving around, the feeling, like, right, I added the music, right? I wanted all of that. And then on top of that, you make these decisions. It's the combination of the two worlds together. And I do hope to continue and add something like that. Sure, Claire.
It was really awesome. Great job, Jess. So my question is, the title of your game is Sweet Honey. Is there a reason for that? What kind of inspired you to come around to that name?
Yes, I do. It was something I wanted to add into the presentation, but I only had 20 minutes. But the reason for it is, at first I actually wanted to make just a diabetes game. It was originally not supposed to do anything with socioeconomic disparities. And it had nothing to do with disadvantages. It had nothing to do with any of that. And when I did create this title, it was a good 20 minutes of me trying to figure something out. But Sweet Honey is the English translation of, I think, mellitus. So that's the Latin word for diabetes. So oh geez, it's been a hot second since I've looked at it, but it's the Latin translation of what the scientific name for diabetes is. And since it was supposed to be that, and since technically right now it is talking about diabetes prevention, I felt like it was okay to keep that as the name. And I just thought it was a nice name. I don't know. I got really excited when I kind of figured that out, that should be the name. And if I got excited about it, we should just keep it as the title.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Go for it, Jesse.
Yeah, I was really struck by the walk experience and kind of how you described that and reflected it on your interaction with that one person you volunteered with. It's just really cool. And I noticed that on the walk that the convenience store was closer than the grocery store. Is that an intentional choice that you make? And do you want to speak about that?
Yes, like I said, it's about the food desert, right? Grocery stores and bigger food areas tend to be further away. And convenience stores are often commonly found in a lot of places. And even in food deserts, you can find convenience stores, you can find the tiny stores, but it's the bigger stores with the more fresh produce that will be the further distance. And that was my kind of interpretation, even though of course it won't be in line with one another, it would probably be a little bit from like an angle, but generally speaking, you will find more grocery stores, you will find more tinier stores closer by in food deserts than you would find a big grocery store. Dr. Hauser, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just curious, in real life or what you'd maybe put into the simulation in your dream sort of vision of it as a game, what do you think the chances are for success or winning? Absent policy changes, like, is this an Oregon Trail thing where like 90% of the time you die of dysentery and that's the game? Or is it that even as it is now, with the right choices, with sacrifices, it is possible to win? Or do you think that it's something that people are really hard pressed to find success at unless there are actual policy changes beyond just personal choices?
So it's probably going to be closer to the Oregon Trail, but there's always definitely a place. Like, you definitely, if you balance things correctly, if you go on the path of, let's say you're single, you're by yourself, and you make the right decisions, right? You definitely have the ability to come out healthy, living your best life, you know? But generally speaking, that's the whole point of a disparity. It's unfair. It's completely unfair. And I wanted to make this to show that it's unfair. And in real life, many people do come out of it and many people live it. And many people don't have these health issues. But I want to make a change. I want to make a statement. And that's the whole point of like a simulator. It's the statement. And it's in my way, a little bit, if I can bring more people to become more familiar with the difficulties, right? And if it's a difficulty, I want to make the game difficult, because in life, it's going to be even more difficult than a simulation. And if I can even show a few pre-meds, because technically I want my target audience is pre-med students and maybe even medical students. I want to kind of allow them to kind of become more familiar with these difficulties, so that as they continue their career into their physician, to be a physician, to be that, and it can be nurses, it can be really anyone. And as I said, hopefully maybe one day, not the bigger population, but as they continue, they can be more aware and they can make more decisions that are more just that they learned about, and then maybe they can make the change and they can be aware. And so that's kind of where I wanted to go with that. Yes, Megan.
So I know you couldn't really touch on any of this in the simulation, but when you wrote the actual thesis part, did you look at any like jobs that were available to these people in the food deserts, and how many hours a week these people had to work in order to make that $240 a week?
So the way that my research had gone, I did not become familiar with any of these actual job topics. And I hope that in the future, as I continue, and because I do want to add a part of this to be, you choose what job you want, so that you do have the ability to choose, right? This is part of Spent, the poverty simulator. They actually the game creators, the game designers of that simulator made it so that you choose what job you have, but that job will have how many hours and the insurance part of it. And honestly, if you guys want to see it, you definitely should look up Spent. It is a really phenomenal poverty simulator that really helped educate me on a lot of this. But yes, I did not go too deep into that aspect, sadly.
So I'm thinking along those lines, in part, considering the different audiences, because in some ways this could also be an educational tool, say, for school kids to become aware of, their own choices.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, pretending that you can just snap your fingers and the coding works and everything like that, I'm wondering if something like allowing the med students or someone interested in public policy to say, well, what happens if we build an urban garden in the neighborhood? Or what happens if we do other kinds of, see the impact of different kinds of interventions on the food desert, on the anxiety levels and kinds of things. And again, then to be able to measure, oh, hey, we make the urban garden available and give, make vegetables more available. How does that help? Or perhaps to see maybe some of the other interventions that people always say, hey, yeah, let's do these things, don't necessarily help. Does a box from the food bank help when, I've been, this is not a slam against food pantries, but I've been to places where the food giveaway is things like candy gummies that have almost no nutritional value. But as I say, to be able to show that there are things that can be done, not just in the individual choices, but in what is done in the community that can improve these things.
I think that definitely can go somewhere. And there's so many wonderful things that everyone brought to light, and I'm really happy. I'm so thankful for everyone that came to this, because you guys brought me so many more ideas to put into this. And I definitely think that's another wonderful way of showing progress. And maybe one day I might get a more fuller team who can help me with all of this. But like I said, I'm still only a 21-year-old into my my year and a half education of game design. And I'm honestly really excited to implement a lot of these ideas. I think these are phenomenal, and I really hope that I can, because I feel that this is one way that I know I personally can make a difference. And that's like a big thing. That's been my biggest motivation, is I really want to make a difference in my own tiny little way. With at least I educated a few of you guys about some of these things, and I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. And I'm so grateful for everyone that came here and who asked all these questions and who listened to me ramble about this simulation that I've been making for 3 months. And one more thing, I just really want to say thank you to Max, who made that music, which I am personally absolutely in love with. I definitely have not been listening to it while I'm doing homework. I want to say thank you so much to Dr. Backstrom. I'm so happy that I am more familiar about this and that I'm capable of using what I know to make a difference. And I'm so grateful that we have talked about this and that you've consistently helped me through this process with just making sure that I am aware of more situations. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, Tyler, for your help in coding. So I couldn't have done anything even remotely similar to this in the amount of time if it wasn't for Tyler. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here, for taking the time to listening to me. And I really hope you guys have a wonderful day. And we're so close to the end. We got this. So thank you, guys. All right. Bye.
Thank you, Jess.
Great job,
luck.
Jess.
All righty. Great job, like everyone was saying. So went a little over, but that's okay. So
Not expecting the amount of questions. I'm really glad people asked so many questions and so many wonderful ideas. I'm so excited to continue with this. So
all right.
I'm still a little nervous, but